At this moment, a new winter threat is building across the United States, and this one is dangerous enough to turn mountain highways into traps of snow, wind, and near zero visibility. In Washington state, forecasters warn that some mountain zones could be buried under as much as 3 to 4 feet of snow, while wind gusts slam the terrain at up to 45 miles per hour, creating true blizzard conditions where drivers may not be able to see the road in front of them. Farther north in Alaska, the danger becomes even more brutal, with whiteout conditions, 50-mile-per-hour gusts, and wind chills plunging to minus 55 degrees, cold enough to threaten survival if someone is stranded outside for too long.
Blizzard of 2026.
The center of America's winter danger has now shifted sharply toward the far northwest, where mountain regions in Washington state and the Arctic coastline of Alaska are entering a much more dangerous phase of snow, wind, and collapsing visibility. Over the last 24 hours, the most serious winter alerts in the country have not been focused on the major East Coast cities, but on high-elevation corridors and remote northern zones where conditions can become life-threatening very quickly. According to National Weather Service warnings, this is now a concentrated but powerful winter event, with Washington emerging as the clearest new hotspot. The most alarming setup is unfolding across the mountains of Washington, including the Olympics, the Cascades, Stevens Pass, Mount Baker, Snoqualmie Pass, White Pass, and the South Washington Cascades. Forecasters say several of these zones are either under blizzard warnings, winter storm warnings, winter weather advisories, or follow-up watches that extend the danger deeper into the week. In the Olympics alone, snowfall may reach as much as 3 feet, while wind gusts could hit 45 miles per hour. In parts of the southern Cascades, totals may rise to 2 feet during the blizzard phase, and later rounds could push some locations toward 4 feet. This is why forecasters are not describing the threat as a simple snow event. It is a growing winter siege across major mountain terrain.
Ah ben ça en empile.
At the same time, Alaska is facing a different kind of winter danger. Along the eastern Beaufort seacoast, snowfall amounts are relatively limited, but the combination of blizzard conditions, 50-mile-per-hour wind gusts, and wind chills near minus 55 degrees creates a far more severe survival risk outdoors. Officials warn that visibility may fall to near zero, and travel could become extremely dangerous or nearly impossible during the worst period. So while this storm is not yet a coast-to-coast paralysis event, it is already a serious and highly dangerous winter emergency in the regions now under its path.
So it's 3 o'clock, March 7th. This is the driving conditions.
This storm is dangerous not just because of how much snow is falling, but because the threat keeps getting worse as each phase moves in. Over the last 24 hours, forecasters in Washington state have steadily raised the alarm as one layer of winter weather gives way to the next. What began as heavy snow warnings in the higher elevations is now turning into a far more serious and drawn-out mountain emergency, with blizzard warnings, winter storm warnings, and follow-up watches stacking across the same corridors. That kind of progression matters because it means the danger is not arriving once and leaving. It is building, tightening, and returning again before people have time to recover.
are locked.
In Washington's mountain zones, the sequence begins with fresh snowfall already spreading across the higher terrain. Then by Tuesday afternoon, March 10th, the storm enters a more dangerous phase as blizzard warnings take effect in key areas, including the Olympics and parts of the Cascades. From that point into late Wednesday, March 11th, visibility may collapse under blowing snow, while strong wind pushes across ridgelines and passes. In the Olympics, snowfall could reach up to 3 feet with gusts to 45 miles per hour. In the southern Cascades of King, Pierce, and Lewis counties, snowfall may reach 2 feet during the blizzard period alone. And that is not where the story ends. The next stage of the system could drive totals even higher, with some areas possibly pushing toward 4 feet. This is where a winter storm stops being a weather inconvenience and starts becoming a real transportation threat. The northern Cascades face an even more troubling pattern because the storm does not simply peak and fade. Areas around Stevens Pass, Mount Baker, and Silverton move through a chain of warnings that keeps renewing the danger. A short burst of heavy snow is followed by advisory conditions, then a full blizzard warning, and then another winter storm watch stretching deeper into the week. That means crews may clear roads only for snow and wind to bury them again. Drivers may think the worst has passed, only to run into another wall of whiteout conditions hours later. In mountain terrain, that kind of repeated impact can turn a routine crossing into a trap of ice, blowing snow, and near-zero visibility. Farther north in Alaska, the timeline is shorter, but the threat is even more unforgiving. Along the eastern Beaufort seacoast, the worst conditions are expected from Tuesday afternoon into Wednesday morning local time. Snowfall amounts are not especially high, but the wind is strong enough to create whiteout conditions, and the cold is severe enough to put lives at risk very quickly. Gusts may reach 50 miles per hour, while wind chills could plunge to minus 55 degrees. In that kind of cold, being stranded for too long is not just dangerous. It can become a fight to stay alive. For the people caught near this storm, the danger begins the moment normal life stops feeling normal. In the mountains of Washington, that can happen fast. A driver may start the trip seeing falling snow and a wet roadway, then within minutes climb into a wall of blowing white where the lane lines fade, the road edge disappears, and even the headlights ahead are swallowed by snow. That is when panic starts to build. The vehicle slows, traffic tightens, wind pushes across the pass. And the terrifying part is that the storm may still be getting stronger, while drivers are already trapped inside it. This is the kind of mountain weather that turns small mistakes into serious emergencies. A missed turn, a car sliding too close to the shoulder, a brief stop that becomes a long standstill. In places like Stevens Pass, Snoqualmie Pass, Mount Baker, and the Olympic high country, people are not just dealing with snow on the road. They are dealing with the sudden loss of distance, direction, and confidence. A driver may think the route is still manageable, only to meet a burst of whiteout so severe that the road ahead seems to vanish completely. If one vehicle spins out or blocks a lane, the danger spreads fast to everyone behind it. In those moments, the storm stops feeling like background weather and starts feeling like a trap closing around the roadway. For people living or working in these mountain areas, the fear is not only about travel, it is also about what comes with heavy snow and wind. Forecasters warn that branches may break, roads may become slick and dangerous, and in some areas there is concern about falling trees or damaged power lines. That means some families may spend hours hearing wind hit the house, knowing conditions outside are worsening, while access routes grow more dangerous by the hour. What makes that fear heavier is the length of the event. This is not a quick burst that passes in one evening. It is a storm that can reload, return, and keep communities on edge. In Alaska, the human threat becomes even more severe. Along the eastern Beaufort seacoast, the most frightening part of the storm is not deep snowfall. It is exposure. officials warn that with near whiteout visibility, wind gusts up to 50 miles per hour, and wind chills near minus 55 degrees, anyone stranded outside for too long could face a life-threatening situation. In that kind of cold, the body begins to lose the fight quickly. Hands stop working the way they should. Skin is at risk in a very short time. Even a simple attempt to move from a vehicle to shelter can become dangerous when the wind erases visibility and the cold cuts through every layer. That is why this storm is so alarming. In Washington, it can trap people in the mountains. In Alaska, it can punish human exposure with brutal speed. The impact of this storm is no longer just about snow totals on a forecast map. It is about what happens when key mountain corridors begin to fail under repeated waves of snow and wind. In Washington state, the greatest pressure is falling on the passes and high elevation routes that connect communities, move freight, and keep daily life functioning across difficult terrain. When those roads begin disappearing under blowing snow, the damage spreads beyond the mountain itself. Drivers are delayed, supply movement slows, workers cannot move safely, families face the risk of being cut off, and the longer the storm holds on, the more those disruptions begin to feel like isolation. This is where the storm becomes dangerous for entire communities, not just for people on the road. Forecasters warn that travel in several mountain zones could become very difficult to nearly impossible during the blizzard period. That means a pass may remain open on paper, but in reality become too dangerous to cross safely. Snow can bury pavement faster than crews can clear it. Wind can push that snow right back across the road minutes later. Visibility can collapse so quickly that drivers lose sight of the lane, the shoulder, and even the vehicles ahead. In that kind of setup, one stuck vehicle can trigger a chain reaction behind it. One closure can push pressure onto another corridor. And one long period of whiteout can leave parts of the mountain network functionally paralyzed. There is also growing concern about the stress this storm can place on basic infrastructure. Heavy snow and strong wind raise the risk of broken branches, falling trees, blocked roads, and in some areas, possible damage to power lines. For mountain residents, that can mean more than inconvenience. It can mean sitting inside a house while wind hits the walls, knowing roads outside are becoming harder to use, and that any outage would arrive at the worst possible time. Even where major damage has not yet been confirmed, the threat is serious because the storm is long-lasting, and each new round increases the chance that local disruption becomes something more severe. In Alaska, the impact is even harsher in terms of human safety. Along the eastern Beaufort Sea coast, the storm may not produce the same deep snow totals seen in Washington, but it brings a different level of danger. Near zero visibility, wind gusts up to 50 miles per hour, and wind chills near minus 55 degrees create conditions where even short exposure outdoors can become dangerous very quickly. In that environment, the threat to the community is not measured only by road conditions or snow depth. It is measured by how quickly normal movement can break down, how hard it becomes to reach safety, and how little margin for error remains once the whiteout begins. As this storm strengthens, the response is already shifting from routine winter monitoring to active risk management. In Washington state, forecasters are not treating this as a simple snowfall event. They are warning that mountain travel could become very difficult to nearly impossible, and that message alone tells you how seriously officials are viewing the next phase. Transportation authorities are directing public attention to past conditions, traffic restrictions, roadway cameras, and live updates for critical routes such as Snoqualmie Pass and Stevens Pass. That is one of the clearest signs that the state is trying to stay ahead of a situation that could deteriorate quickly if snowfall and wind begin overwhelming the mountain corridors at the same time. The role of road crews in a storm like this is essential, but it is also one of the most difficult parts of the response. Snow can be cleared, then blown back across the road. A pass can look manageable for a short window, then become dangerous again as the next burst moves in. That means response teams are not fighting one clean event with a clear ending. They are working inside a storm cycle that can reload and intensify before earlier impacts are fully resolved. In practical terms, that creates a constant race between falling snow, blowing snow, visibility loss, and the effort to keep strategic routes usable for emergency movement and necessary travel. The danger for officials is that once several mountain routes begin failing at the same time, recovery becomes slower and far more complicated. Public safety messaging is also becoming a major part of the response. In Washington, the repeated warnings about dangerous to impossible travel are meant to reduce the number of people entering the passes before the worst conditions arrive. That matters because the most effective rescue in a blizzard is often the one that never becomes necessary. Every driver who stays off a high-risk road removes pressure from plow crews, tow operations, and emergency responders. Every delayed trip lowers the chance of a vehicle becoming stranded in whiteout conditions. In that sense, officials are not only responding to the storm, they are trying to reduce the number of emergencies the storm is able to create. In Alaska, the response carries an even sharper survival message. Along the eastern Beaufort Sea coast, officials are warning that travel should be limited to emergencies and that anyone forced to go out should carry winter survival gear. That is not routine language. It reflects a storm environment where the margin for error is almost gone once whiteout and extreme wind chill arrive together. When authorities begin emphasizing survival equipment instead of normal winter caution, it is a sign that this is no longer just about getting through bad weather. It is about avoiding situations where rescue may be delayed and exposure itself becomes the emergency. This storm is a warning about how winter danger often becomes most severe far away from the biggest cities, in places where one road, one pass, or one stretch of open ground can decide whether people stay safe or become trapped. The lesson here is not only that heavy snow is dangerous, it is that snow becomes far more threatening when it arrives with strong wind, repeated storm phases, and terrain that gives people very little room to recover once conditions begin to collapse. In Washington state, the threat is growing because the storm is not ending after one burst. It is arriving in layers, with blizzard warnings, winter storm warnings, and follow-up watches stacking across the same mountain regions. That kind of pattern increases the risk of road closures, isolation, delayed emergency access, and communities push closer to the edge with each new round. Another lesson is that the most damaging winter events are not always the ones making the biggest national headlines. This system is not yet a coast-to-coast shutdown, and it is not centered on the massive urban corridor of the East. But in the mountains of Washington and along Alaska's northern coast, it is already severe enough to create conditions that can threaten lives. In Washington, up to 3 to 4 feet of snow and wind gusts near 45 miles per hour are enough to turn high elevation routes into dangerous white corridors with little warning. In Alaska, the deeper lesson is even more brutal. You do not need extreme snowfall totals to face a winter emergency. Whiteout conditions, 50-mile-per-hour gusts, and wind chills near minus 55 degrees are more than enough to create a survival threat outdoors. The warning for the future is clear. Communities, drivers, and agencies cannot judge winter danger only by how much snow is expected. They also have to measure wind, visibility, storm duration, terrain, and how hard it will be to reach help once the weather turns. That is especially true in mountain regions and Arctic coastlines, where a short decision to travel can become a long emergency. The broader message from this storm is simple and serious. Winter does not need to cover the whole country to become deadly. It only needs the right combination of snow, wind, cold, and timing in the places least able to absorb a mistake. What is unfolding tonight across Washington state and northern Alaska is a reminder that some of the most dangerous winter emergencies in America do not begin with dramatic scenes in major cities. They begin in mountain passes, remote corridors, and exposed coastlines where visibility fails, roads disappear, and the cold leaves almost no room for error. In Washington, the threat is being driven by repeated rounds of heavy snow and blizzard conditions that could bury parts of the mountain terrain under 3 to 4 feet of snow, while wind gusts push across the passes hard enough to erase the road in blowing white. In Alaska, the danger is even more unforgiving, with whiteout conditions, 50-mile-per-hour gusts, and wind chills near minus 55 degrees, creating a situation that can become life-threatening very quickly for anyone caught outside or stranded too long. This is why officials are urging people to take these warnings seriously. Even where this storm does not look like a nationwide shutdown, it is already powerful enough to turn local travel into a major public safety risk. And when a storm begins to reload instead of fade, the danger can last longer than many people expect. If you are watching from an area facing winter weather tonight, tell us what conditions are like where you are And if you want more verified updates on dangerous weather and breaking events, make sure to subscribe to the channel.